like to call this November 20th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Ms. Stavcek?
Ms. Stavcek is delayed. She will join us as soon as possible.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We have a quorum.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is executive session. Executive session for the topics of
To consider the employment, dismissal, and discipline of a public employee.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Cobain, second by Mrs. Wolfhausum. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Micko?
Yes, the motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 6:20. We will exit from executive session as closely to 7 p.m. as possible. Thank you. is really close to 7 p.m., and we will now resume our public session. And next on our agenda is strategic priorities. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan, which reflects our values and beliefs. Our 4 strategic priorities are transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. And all the decisions we make are measured against those priorities. Next is OSBA student achievement. Do we have any this month?
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
This month, we visited Whitney Elementary, and the principal, Katie, is here to announce her nominees for this month. Yeah, the only disappointing thing was Haley was sick, and she couldn't go with me, so my partner didn't get to see it. It's like one of our, I think it is our most fun job.
I was not going to do the Sarah flag of 2020.
Yeah. So come on up, Katie, and you can announce.
All right, so I would like to ask Davis Painter to come on up, or in other words, I call him DP. All right. Okay. Today, we gather to celebrate a remarkable individual who embodies the essence of hard work, determination, and resilience. It is with great pride that I present the Extra Mile Award to a truly outstanding student, Davis Painter. Davis is not just a student, he is a shining example of what it means to challenge oneself and push beyond limits. His commitment to his education is evident in every aspect of his work. From the moment he steps into the classroom, Davis is fully engaged, participating actively, and encouraging those around him to do the same. He is a leader in every sense of the word, guiding his peers with kindness and an unwavering belief in their potential. What sets Davis apart is his determined mindset. He approaches every obstacle with a positive attitude and a fierce commitment to success. When given the opportunity to practice new skills, Davis doesn't shy away from those challenges. In fact, he eagerly requests the hardest problem that his teachers have to offer, demonstrating his desire to grow and excel. This determination is not only commendable, but also contagious, inspiring his classmates to also strive to do their best. Additionally, Davis has gone above and beyond by creating a classroom mnemonics that will benefit not only his peers now, but future students for years to come. His creativity and willingness to share his insights have enriched our learning environment, making it more vibrant and engaging for everyone. Davis, your resilience and your work ethic are truly remarkable. You have a unique ability to uplift those around you, fostering a positive atmosphere in your classroom. For all of these reasons and more, you truly deserve this recognition for your outstanding contributions and your relentless pursuit of excellence. Let us all take a moment today to celebrate Davis Painter, or DP, a student who exemplifies what it means to go the extra mile. Congratulations to Davis. We are all so incredibly proud of you. Oh, yes, Davis, by all means. Here. He has a lot of words of wisdom. You don't have to? You don't want to? No? Mom!
Okay. Thank you for my teachers that helped me and Miss Zach that helped me get the Extra Mile Award.
He's going to do something really great. I'll tell you that. So I have to tell you, when I was thinking of a student, and I mean, Davis literally popped into my mind immediately when I got the email, and I went and talked to the fourth grade teachers and Miss Zach, who helps supports fourth grade, and like when I said his name, you could just see all of their faces like, oh, yes, like it was just, I mean, Davis, you are so deserving, buddy. So we are so appreciative of all of your hard work, and you show great leadership for everyone around you. So keep doing great things, buddy, okay? All right. Okay, let me put my glasses on because I can't read. All right, my next Extra Mile Award recipient is Mrs. Gail Trimper. Mrs. Gail, come on up. All right. So today we are here to honor an exceptional individual who has made a significant impact in our school community in a remarkably short amount of time. So it is with my great pleasure to present the Extra Mile Award to our dedicated school secretary, Gail Trimper. Although Gail has been in her role for less than 2 years, right? It's been about a little less than that. She has already proven herself to be an invaluable asset to our school. Gail goes above and beyond in every way possible. She willingly takes on projects that extend beyond her defined role as a school secretary, driven by her genuine care for both students and staff. Her commitment to our school is evident in everything that she does. Beyond her administrative duties, Gail is a talented cricketer, if that's a word, and brings her creativity to life by designing our holiday shirts, our office shirts, and homemade cards for various occasions. Her artistic flair enhances our school spirit and helps to foster a sense of community among us all. In a delight twist, Gail has also gone viral with her innovative idea of creating bi-weekly videos showcasing our lost and found table. With an average of 800 views per video, she has not only brought attention to lost items, but also added a touch of humor and charm to an otherwise mundane task. Moreover, Gail is a fantastic communicator. Anytime I ask for help with something, she takes it on without complaint and shows such great initiative. Her willingness to assist others and her proactive approach make her an essential part of our team. She ensures that everyone is informed and feels supported, which is a vital role in creating such a collaborative environment. But beyond her creativity, communication, and humor, Gail embodies resilience, determination, and hard work. She is often the first face that students and families see as they enter our school, making everyone feel welcome and valued. Gail consistently goes the extra mile to ensure that our students have all the resources they need to be successful, demonstrating her unwavering commitment to their well-being. Gail, we are truly grateful for your outstanding contributions to our school community. Your dedication, creativity, and kindness have made a lasting impact on us all, and you truly deserve this recognition. So let's congratulate Gail on receiving the Extra Mile Award for Whitney. Oh, yes.
Now, give me a microphone. And I will say, our special student over there, Davis, he has never made the video for the Lost and Found because he is a responsible individual and takes his stuff home. Katie's very kind, and it's very, very easy to go the extra mile at Whitney Elementary because of her leadership and because of our wonderful staff. It's just a family environment there, and everybody jumps in, not just me. You know, we have a problem with microphones not working for dismissal. Everybody grabbed a walkie-talkie and spanned out. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful school, and it's one that I love supporting. So I truly appreciate you nominating me for this honor, and I will continue to do the extra mile. And if you would like to watch our video, it's called "This Is Why We Can't Buy You Nice Things." Thank you. My husband, Bob. We have Kim Harrington in this one now, so.
We're very proud of you. So before we move on, I just want to, once again, on behalf of the board, thank Davis and Gail for joining us and being good examples of what it means to be a model Mustang. The one thing I wanted to highlight was Mrs. Drake said that DP is a shining example of what it means to be a model Mustang. And if I look at Mom, I know where the shine comes from because she has been beaming since the start of the meeting, and it's well-deserved. We thank Mom and Dad, and we thank what I'm assuming is Davis's older brother for showing a great example that Davis can follow in. So thanks to everyone for joining us, and congratulations. If there is anybody who has homework that they need to get done or videos to make,
Yeah.
we understand. Next on the agenda is public comment. The first slip I have is Bonnie Tennis. Bonnie, I appreciate you coming. You know the drill, name and address, and you have approximately 3 minutes.
Well, if I go a little bit over, I mean, some people are allowed a little bit over, like this Maloney or something. I mean, I have a little bit more because I have some explanation. So my name is Bonnie Tennis, 9407 Brushwood Lane. Now, I passed out the printouts. The reason why, because I do have time to do a lot of research. And there are many questions like why people maybe didn't vote for the levy, why people did vote for the levy, and it's like some people made these comments against the people that didn't vote for the levy. So I made the printouts just for you to see what are the people paying that are living in homes that are older than Albion School was. Albion School was demolished, was 1968. There are over 2,000 homes. 2,879 homes that are older than Albion School. And those people actually, if you take percentage-wise, it's not how much property value they pay, but what's the increase since 2019 when the levy passed, what are they paying? And what is that if you take your home and compare to one of those properties that have increased 50%, what would your property be paying? I mean, what you would be paying on a property. Then you would really see what those people are experiencing. It's easy to be on top. And I noticed that the excellence for education, the people that are involved in that, most of them are at the top level. There are no people at the bottom. I'm in the middle, so I'm not for I'm not for middle people. I'm a little bit talking more about the and I'm standing up for the people that live in those older homes because they've got hit the most. And that's why I passed those printouts, not to do anything else other than for you to see and compare. So I would like you to, after you look at it, because I look at every information that you pass, that you post. So please look at it so the next time you will know why and what happened and why maybe people didn't vote and what this board and this district has to do in order to accommodate or compromise when things like this happen, when we have this large increase. So please look at it. And so, but I would like to start, so I need a little bit extra time because I needed to explain. First, I would like to say that in the last 6 years, I've learned a lot when it comes to public school finances, contract reporting, school tax, property tax, etc. Most of the learning was done on my own, but I do need to thank this panel, especially Mr. Treasurer, for providing all the data and information that I requested, answered all my questions with details and examples. I do watch almost all the meetings. I do browse through all the meetings agendas, the reports and forecasts. It's not easy to understand all this, but it's possible, but it takes a lot of time and lots of data, and that is what I have. I just have to get better at public speaking. It's hard when you only have 3 minutes here and 5 minutes at city meetings to get the point across. You have to pick and choose things that seem to be the most important, but because of the time limitation, the outcome is not always what I would like that to be. That's like asking Mr. Treasurer present 5-year forecast on monthly report at the meeting at only 3 minutes without any data and slides. We would only get small pieces of information that would not make sense. So I'll try to make sense in just 2 minutes, since that alone took already 1 minute. I rather present only the facts, but this time I would like to inject into a little bit of my own experience to what I saw that possibly affected the levy outcome. It's easy to blame just one thing or one group, but there are multiple things that contributed to it, at least to what I experienced. Maybe there was too much of attack on that group or some residents, too much retaliation, which might have backfired, calling the information like fake news propaganda. I don't believe those lies and a lot more. Yes, that group might have influenced some people, but not all the people. Second reason, and it's a very good reason, are the reappraisals. Not just this last one. Most of the people that were hit hard were the residents living in older homes. And many of those homes are older than Albion School, like I already mentioned. And they are all dealing with high property tax increases higher than many well-to-do residents. Please see all the printouts that I provided. Those are not just isolated cases. There are thousands of those unfair appraisals. Many residents that are living in those older homes were the ones who financed those older schools, and you are telling those residents that those schools are too old and had to be demolished when their homes are older than those schools, now asking the same people to fund another set of new schools. There were many comments and statements made, but I only have time for a couple of them. One of them was made during the State of the Schools 2024. That's why we all have to be more sensitive what we're saying and how we're saying. I've read every comment on those websites for, against, and I compiled everything. I have all the information. And I've noticed that some things were hurtful to me, but more even to other people. Like at the State of the Schools. That $25 million that could have been reinvested to new elementary schools, new athletic facilities, and performing arts upgrades may have to be used for critical repairs for buildings that are 70 and 60 years old. Do we want to put a new roof on a 70-year-old building, or do we want to build a new one? We have to remember that there are buildings that are 1830, 1890, and they actually now appraised are more than the school that the school was sold. The Albion School was demolished. We have to be more sensitive to those people that live in those homes. We can't just say, do we want to put a roof on a 7-year-old? Maybe we do and maybe we don't, but if we don't, then we do have a good explanation why, and we have to compromise. So I know we need new schools, but we have to be a little bit more sensitive to that, and we can't say that because those people put roofs on their homes, and those homes are older than, the schools. So another thing is that comment that Mr. Miko, you made at the city meeting. There is a combination of the reappraisal plus or levy that is being sold as an increase in taxes. But I will say, the idea that the school board can solve the problem of inflation by adjusting a levy on the hand of a little bit, wow, and it says children's back, whatever that is. I would like to say to the Board of Education here that nobody's asking this board to solve inflation and reappraisal problem. Just a little bit of understanding and compromise, asking for a reduction when people see a large amount of cash reserve and high property tax increases, nothing wrong. They're just asking. You say that property revaluation has nothing to do with the levy, even if it does not. What one expects residents to do when they see high increase on the property? How can they separate and say, oh, that has nothing to do with the levy, but I have to pay $800, so yeah, I will pay $800 more because it's not related to the levy. You can't separate those two. No, do simply want them, I mean, you can't ask people to do that. They have to do what's best for them, and you have to learn how to compromise to be able to get what you want and what those people need. Dollars actually what we want here. Well, not what you want, but what you need, what the school district needs. When it comes to the last levy that did not pass, there was a chance for Board of Education to make it right with residents. But it was not done. I understand not to give in to that one group demands, but Board of Education easily could say in May to residents, we are getting an extra $2.4 million from the reappraisal, so we are willing to lower the levy by $2.4 million. There would be no gain, but there would be no loss to the original levy amount. Still, district would have the interest earning from the cash reserve, which is about $1.5 million for the next few years, but there would be no loss. Now here, when it comes to this extra money that it comes every reappraisal, here this is what Mr. Chambers said at the meeting. The money collected from inside millage is divided between the county school, municipal villages, and varies based on where you live and where your school district is. Therefore, when property value increases, yes, school get more money based on the amount of inside millage assigned to the district. Ohio law put that in a long time ago, Chambers said. It was a way to try to show some nominal growth along the line so schools wouldn't have to keep going back and asking for additional levies. This was actually extra money that could be spared. So now, I hate what was done to this $9.8 million. It was gamble and it was lost. And now children will have to walk to school instead of take a bus, and you have to make the cuts. And I believe that was unnecessary. And that 58 cents per thousand that was listed there, 58 cents per thousand home, was a pity money. It should not be even listed at 58 cents. That was a pity money. I would not even go for it. And you ask people to say, oh, look, we lowered it, and it's 58 cents per thousand. That $2.4 million will do it, and now nobody will lose anything. Many residents that voted no had a legit reason. Some of them were overwhelmed with those high increases. As you can see on my printouts, many well-to-do residents, they live in newer homes due to reappraisal are getting bigger tax breaks. And that's because if you look at that, the property, the homes that are older going up, but the properties that are higher in value going down or they're not increasing. The reason why, because if someone would put an increase 50% on a property that is $700,000 or $600,000, that person would scream. But because someone puts a 50%, 40% on a lower home, then those people that someone would say, like people that are well-to-do, oh, what's a few $1,000s? Well, for those people, that's why I listed for you and I printed for you. What would that mean to your property if your property would go that 50, 40% up? Now, I didn't do for Mr. Treasurer because he had that flag, non-owner occupancy, whatever, and it would. Mr. Stovich just moved into the new home, so I didn't do it. But I did for rest of the panel. Now, except you. And but for you to see what is happening when you look at the streets that are with homes that are built before. Now,
Bonnie?
Yes, one more. Well, this is
You're
this
at
is
10
a closing.
minutes.
Yes, I know. This is the closing one. Why taxes for some homes go sharply up? Bottom line, at the appraisal time, home increasing faster than average will shoulder more of that burden. This is because many of the taxes that make up the total bill are designed to raise a certain amount of money. Up to that point, that's HB 920. But after that is the appraisals reshuffles those shares among property owners. So that means if someone gets a big credit, big discount, someone else is picking it up. And this is from the Cleveland.com and from other places. And that's what it says. The appraisals reshuffles. And that's what it does. So if you get a discount or you get a discount on your tax break, those people in 1959 homes, they will get it. And you'll see it on those printouts. Maybe we should try to teach all residents how the property evaluation really works, and it has nothing to do with home location improvements. Then maybe people will understand there is a need for reform and for everyone to pay fair property tax. There is a need for reform, and people don't understand how it works, and I do. And I do now, and I am really surprised the way it works, and that's why we should be more sensitive and more open to compromising instead of saying my way or a highway. Thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'd like to compliment you. You've been to our meetings on many occasions. You do your homework, and you always give us food for thought. Next is Brett Tomford. I heard that Brett wants 10 minutes, starting now.
I appreciate it. I don't need 10 minutes. Perfect timing to follow up after Mrs. Fraulein. Okay. I came here also to talk about the failed levies. I know most of you board members. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Brett Tomford. I live at 20640 Kelsey Lane. I've been a Strongsville resident for over 24 years, and I'm a taxpayer. I'm a strong supporter of the schools and sports in the community, even if you don't think so. I'm compelled to come here tonight after watching the board meeting on November 7th. I wanted to give the board and the pro-levy contingent an understanding of why these levies failed. I saw a lot of finger-pointing, excuses, and zero accountability. I want to make it very clear. The levies did not fail because of timing. Medina passed theirs after 2 failed attempts. Brunswick passed their renewal. It did not fail because of spending. To continue the excellence and pro-levy side outspent the opposition 2-1 through the failed levies. It did not fail because of messaging. There were vote yes signs everywhere. I got mailers, social media, plenty of messaging. It did not fail because of strategy. The suggestion that engaging with different political groups or organizations would have made any difference is incorrect. This is not a Republican, Democrat, or independent issue. This is a taxpayer issue. No, the reason these levies all went down is because you as a board failed to uphold one of the 2 primary responsibilities in your bylaws. You as a board did not meet the desires of the citizens you represent. It is important that the board acknowledge that they did not follow one of the primary mandates of the board and take the responsibility for the failures of these levies. At the last board meeting, you talked about wanting to meet again with the opposition and listen to what they had to say. It should be noted that the opposition did give the board constructive solutions before each failed levy. The solutions were thoughts that were best interest of the schools and, more importantly, the taxpayers. Sorry, I lost train of thought there. The board and the finance committee not only ignored but outright dismissed any of these solutions. It was actually almost comical when at the last board meeting it was brought to the attention that once they got the letter that said we have too much money in the bank, that was it. Let's be clear. You were told that if you don't cut this levy significantly, that if the taxpayers were to see all the financial information that was out there provided by the opposition, that the levies would most likely fail, and they did. You were not listening. For there to be good dialogue between the board and the citizen, there needs to be honesty, transparency, and a commitment to responsible spending. The board needs to communicate and listen to the community. If you truly want to understand how we got here with the failed levies, it's important that everybody go back and watch the State of the Schools, February 2019, when you originally asked for this levy. I specifically think that Michelle, Laura, Sharon, and Haley should watch this. You were not on the board back then. And before you make any financial decisions, whether it be spending or cutting, you need to watch this. When the schools were asking for this levy back then and said why they needed it, a couple things to keep in mind. They said the schools needed this levy just to maintain current education expenses, no additional spending. You said that you projected that there would only be $23 million in the bank with the levy fiscal year end 24. You had $77 million. You also said that in 2019 that you understood what the taxpayers said when it failed the original levy in 2018, that you would give the constituents a reason to vote or a renewal to vote on this every 5 years to say whether or not you're doing a good job with the tax dollars. Well, obviously they spoke and they don't think you are. You should have cut this levy. I understand that being a school board member is hard and it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback after the fact. But the board needs to take accountability and start listening to what the taxpayers are saying to make informed, appropriate decisions. I appreciate your time, and hopefully the board can have meaningful conversations with its citizens in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And last is Monique Adenyi. Am I even close on your last name? Adeniji. Again, your name, your address, and you have approximately 10 minutes.
Oh, no, I won't take 10 minutes. So my name is Monique Adeniji. I am a parent of 3 children that attend Strongsville City Schools. And I've been a resident for 13 years, and I live in Deerfield Development. So my question was only to ask that I noticed that we are improving, or we have a lot of athletes, the band, and I was just wondering if we can have more of the academic clubs. I did speak with the principal. Last year, I tried to encourage my daughter with writing. We hired a private tutor, and so she joined the Power of the Pen. And so I was asking her, well, how did it go? And she said that the teacher just sat there. She didn't give them writing props. She didn't give them anything. And she was so discouraged that she dropped out. So this year, I encouraged her again to join it again. And she was like, okay, Mom, I'll do it for you. So she joined, and the students did not want to compete. So, and she said they took a vote. And most of the kids, it was their first time. She didn't recognize any familiar faces. And she's very popular at the school. She knows a lot of kids. So, and she said they didn't really want to compete. And then that kind of discouraged her. So I was just asking, I know with all of this being said and the levy not passing, is that if we can like try, at least in the middle school, to add more academics clubs. We have football, basketball, soccer. Strongsville is really good at sports. But I see very little academic for the kids, whether it's a reading club, a spelling club. That's it. So next time I'll come more prepared. So thank you all.
Thank you very much for your comments. I know we listened very closely, and I'm certain that we will follow up at the middle school. I will share, I hear the complaint a lot, you know, we prioritize academics. We prioritize athletics, we prioritize music, we prioritize band, we don't prioritize this properly or whatever. And I just want to share, you know, I hope everyone understands it's not either or, it should always be and. So we can prioritize academics, we can prioritize athletics, we can prioritize music, theater, whatever it is. So I thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we will respond. Is there anyone else who wanted to take advantage of my 10-minute? Hearing none. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of the November 7th, 2024 work session. All district video and audio are a permanent part of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek.
Consent.
Oh, it's consent calendar. When am I ever going to remember that? I make that mistake every time. So we will vote on this when we get to the consent calendar. Next, we have our treasurer's report. George, you're up.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Micco. I have a few items for your consideration tonight. The first being the financial report for the month ended October 31st, 2024. I'm not going to review that, as the next item is the 5-year forecast So I'm going to go over that instead. Let's pull it up. So the 5-year forecast, as you may all be aware, it's an item that we have to do twice a year. The board approves and submit it to the state, the Department of Education, November and October, or November and May. The way we do it is we start with, for budget process, we start in July, we set a temporary budget, and then in September, we have to adopt an annual budget. So in September, we do a budget forecast, and then update that on how we're trending again in November. And then the May forecast for the current year, we use it as a trending out for the current fiscal year and begin the budget process for the following year. So an update at those times and submit it to the Department of Education. The purpose and objectives of the 5-year forecast is to engage the local Board of Education and community in the long-range planning and discussion of the financial issues facing the district, to serve as a basis for determining the school district's ability to sign the certificate required by Ohio Revised Code 5705.412, commonly known as the 412 certificate. That means, do you have enough money to certify any contracts that you're entering into, specifically multi-year contracts? And 3, to provide the Department of Education and Workforce and the Auditor of State a vehicle to identify school districts with potential financial problems. And then the forecast methodology. The forecast is prepared based upon historical trends and current factors. This information is then extrapolated into estimates for subsequent years. The forecast variables can change multiple times throughout the fiscal year, and while the cash flow monitoring helps to identify unexpected variances, no process is guaranteed. The intent is to provide the district's financial trend over time and a roadmap for decisions aimed at encouraging financial sustainability and stability. The forecast is broken down into 4 parts: the major assumptions, the general fund revenues, expenditures, and the 5-year forecast summary. Moving into the major assumptions, starting with revenues. Our property tax collections are our biggest revenue source, and part of that calculation and forecasting the taxes is the collection rate, meaning when the county auditor bills the residents for the property taxes, how much of that is collected. Our 3-year average is 99.47%. That's the gross collection rate, meaning includes the prior delinquencies as well. The gross collection rate did increase to 99.26 in calendar year 22 compared to 21 and 96.85, and has stayed consistent in calendar year 23, then increased again in calendar year 24 to 99.88%. So 1% represents about $800,000 to $900,000 increase in collections, just as a reference point. Valuations, assessed valuations, that's also a factor in determining property taxes as well, and the tax rates. Going back to collection year 22 was a triennial budget year for Cuyahoga County. Residential values increased by 15.74%, and commercial values increased by a net of 1.59% through evaluation. However, commercial values also decreased by 2.02% through change in class, for a total decrease of 0.61%. During collection year 23, residential values increased by 0.48%, while commercial values increased by 1%. And then collection year 2025, which is coming up next year, is a sexennial budget for the county, which occurs every 6 years, with the last occurrence being in 2018. Based on the preliminary numbers with the Cuyahoga County, the forecast estimates 28.39% valuation increase in residential property, and also assumes a 9.5 value increase in commercial property. As was stated, yes, we had factored in the increase for inside millage, which represents about 2.4 million over a calendar year. The valuations are still haven't been released by the county; they're being certified by the state, and we should receive those figures sometime next month, as well as the new millage rates with the effective rates. Also, in 3 years, there'll be a triennial update, which occurs 3 years after the sexennial update, and that'll occur in 2027. The forecast assumes a 10% increase in valuation in residential property and a 2% increase in commercial based on the 2027 triennial update, which is based on historical averages and previous triennial updates. And then during collection year 2023, public utility values increased by 0.639%, And then during collection year 2024, it increased again by 1.1%, and the forecast assumes a 5.52% in public utility from 2014 to 23 was the average. Any questions on that so far? So as property values increase, what happens to the tax rates based on House Bill 920? The tax rates decrease to offset the increase, and these are based on the voted taxes. So just the historical trend in 2018, there was a 10.7% increase, while if you look on the graph on the, let me make the graph a little larger. So as the values increase, you could see the corresponding rates decrease. In 2021, there was the value increase, and then the rates decreased. Well, in 2022, the increase in rates in 2019 was the renewal levy. And then if you look in 24, there was a 29% increase in values, and then the corresponding decrease in rates, and that also factors in that 30% decrease in rate, also factors in the levy, the 2019 levy coming off the books as well. I gotta reset though. And then looking at the future years, in 2027 for the triennial reappraisal, there's a 10% increase in projected values with a 7% decrease in rates. And what does that do to, how does that look over time? This graph here shows the voted rate, then the gray shows the effective rate, and the 20 mil floor. What the 20 mil floor is, we really haven't talked about it, but as we were really close to, not close to it in the past, but as the values keep increasing and with this levy coming off the books, we're getting close to the 20 mil floor. So what that is it's in play with House Bill 920. So House Bill 920, as the values increase, the rates decrease, but the rates can only decrease to a certain extent, and that's 20 mils. So once they hit 20 mils, you're at the floor and they can't go down any further. So if once a school district hits the 20 mil floor, as values increase, the rates stay the same, and then it's a true one-for-one increase in collections for the or in payments for the homeowner. So right now, I'm estimating we're at 25.02 mils with tax year 27. With that potential increase, that will put us at 23 mils, and then in November of 26, we have that other renewal levy on the books. So determination, what happens with that, it could potentially put the district at the 20 mil floor. Any questions?
Bonnie, you can ask any questions after the meeting.
That's not a question, it's a comment.
You can make any comments after the meeting.
Okay. Sometimes you allow it, so I'm sorry. Sometimes you do. I ask.
In 2022, I still, as part of the forecast, have the refund based on the mall as it's shown in the historical year. So once that time frame goes away, this bullet point will come off. And then also the forecast the forecast now includes the 2019 levy off the books. And then in November 2021, residents renewed a 5-year 6 mil levy with collection beginning January 23. The forecast assumes the levy will expire December 31st, 2026, and collections will continue through December of 2027. It can first go on the ballot November of 2026, and the final chance is November of 2027. State funding, we're being funded on the state biennium budget. This is the second year. Well, this is the second biennium budget with the fair funding formula. This is the second year of the last year of the current biennium budget. In the spring, they'll have conversations about the state budget and how it impacts school districts. But right now, with the current biennium budget over the 2-year period, we saw a cumulative increase of $564,000, $248,000 last school year, and $316,000 this year. As part of the biennium budget, there's restricted State revenue, for this year, it's 816,000, 300,000 of which is for a science of reading reimbursement. It's a training that the teachers must complete based on certain licensure. Once completed, we have to pay them either a $1,200 stipend or a $400 stipend based on their licensure, and that stipend is reimbursed by the state. So that's just factoring in the estimated cost there. And then the other four categories, success and wellness, career tech, disadvantaged pupil aid, and gifted, those were the core restricted aid that's been in the fair funding formula. So on an annual basis, those are about $450,000 to $500,000. What's changed? So in September, I presented a budget forecast. Now in November, I'm presenting the 5-year forecast. So what's changed since the September forecast to this forecast? State aid, it's showing a little bit less, which bases on the transportation funding. That's going to hit in December. So earlier was an earlier estimate. We'll find out next month what it's going to be, but it looks like it's going to be $163,000 less than what was currently estimated. Restricted grants is about $30,000 higher. Other revenue, currently this year and next year was up $82,000. We started collecting the Lorain County TIF for Emerald Woods. We just received that. Wasn't really expecting it until they didn't know when it was going to be, and then I met with them, and a week or two later we received it. And then the decreases in the out years is more reducing the interest income that I had based on with a proportionate to the decrease in cash balance based on the future years as we're beginning to spend down the cash balance. And then the last line in the September forecast, we had the proposed new levy, so that wasn't approved, so that's coming off in this forecast. Any questions on revenues before we get into expenditures? Expenditures, no change in staffing from what I presented in September. The general fund is up 51 positions from last year. A portion of those positions is due to 35 positions are coming onto the general fund from the ESSER funds as those expired at the end of this school year. And then the remaining 16 positions are due to teaching and support staff based on student needs. Healthcare premiums, last year we saw a 15% increase. This year we saw a 3% increase. And then the future years are projected at a 7% increase. So based on how each year happens, we could see either an increase or a decrease in expenditures there. We're always looking to come in better than that number. 2024 was the first year that we were above the 15%. So we'll continue to watch that and see how we're trending. Purchase services increased by $1.1 million from last year to this year. It's partly due to increasing costs and payments for special education, instructional service costs, legal fees, and then also we have the mobile units that were added for this year. That's coming out of purchase services. Those are about $400,000, and then utility costs and property risk insurance. Those were an increase of about $200,000. Materials and supplies increased by $1.6 million from 2023 to 2024 in last year's, and that was due to a textbook adoption. This year, the increase is it's not an increase, it's decreasing due to that one-time expenditure from last year. It's decreasing about $900,000 from what we spent last year to this year. And overall, materials and supplies make up about 3.22% of our budget, and then capital outlay that we have set aside for Chromebooks infrastructure in the district's one-to-one technology. And then what's changed from the September budget forecast to the November? In September, we budget for the positions as they're there, and now we're beginning to trend them out. And overall, it's about $900,000 trending under budget this year. In the grand scheme of things, it's about 1% over overall budget of $91 million. And then our purchase service increases in the out years are for utility increases that we're seeing this year as they're coming in. And then other objects, I decreased the county auditor fees as it's based on percentage of tax collections. So with the levy coming off, I factored in a reduction in auditor fees. So kind of going through the graphs on the general fund revenues, overall, total general fund revenues make up $86.9 million. As you see in fiscal year 28 and 29, the orange bar, that's the renewal levy that's shows it off the revenues and then added back on the top. Overall, local taxes make up about 72% of our revenues, while state sources make up 18% and other income make up 10%. And just another, this graph is just how it's stacked on each category. The blue is the property taxes, while the green is the state aid, and then the purple is the state share of the local taxes. Looking at each individual category, residential and commercial property taxes, they make up about 67% of our total general fund revenue. From 2024 to 2025, we'll have a decrease based off the renewal levy expiring. So this January, the collections will be coming in less. So we'll have a half-year reduction this fiscal year, and then the full year, then another half year for a full year reduction in 2026. So you see the decline in these 2 years, then it stabilizes until 2028 until the other renewal comes into play. Public utility makes about 5.13% of the total district revenues. It's for 2024 to 2025, it's staying the same. The offset and the loss of revenue there is offset by the increase in valuation for public utility. Unlike residential and commercial property, public utility is not set to the effective rate, so that is set to the voted rate. So as those values increase, the public utility revenue increases as well. And those make up about $4.4 million of the district revenue. State aid, it's about $9 million. Each year it is increasing based on the formula, and the increase is within the transportation funding. Restricted aid, the increase in 24 and 25 was due to one-time expenses. In 2024, we did receive about $300,000 in reimbursement for the textbooks that we purchased, as there was initiative from the governor's office for the highly qualified instructional materials. And in 2025, the increase is due to the stipends for the science and reading reimbursement. Local share of property taxes, it's decreasing with the levy coming off. The levy didn't have the rollback credit, but it did have the homestead exemption. Now we'll add the other renewal has both the homestead and the rollback, so that you see a bigger decrease there. The rollback is 10%, while the homestead is 2.5%. Other revenue is about $7.9 million, and what it's made up of is our preschool kindergarten tuition, tuition from other districts, interest income, sports pay to play, catastrophic aid reimbursement from the state, Medicaid reimbursement, and revenue in lieu of taxes, where the city keeps us whole on their agreements. And the decrease there is just the interest income over in the out years based on the decrease in cash balance. Other financing sources, these are primarily based off refunds from prior years. The biggest increase in 2021 was the one-time dollars from the BWC rebates, which we received in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Overall, this makes up about 0.30% of the general fund's operating revenue. Any questions before I go to the expenditures?
Hey, George, as far as the state foundation is concerned, what is your methodology for the out years? Because there's concern that Columbus will not fully fund the last third tranche of this state foundation. So have you made any adjustments, or are you assuming at this point they will fund it?
At this point, just assuming that how it's written, that'll continue.
That it'll continue and they won't cut back.
Right.
So that is a risk we have to be aware of.
Correct.
Next not next semester, next half year, when
Yeah,
they
in the spring.
work on the biennium budget.
Yeah, the other risk too is we're still on the guaranteed. So we're a guaranteed district. We're about a couple million on the guarantee. Every year, we've kind of been pushed off a little bit. So that's a risk too. In the years past, there's been talk about, do they eliminate the guarantees? And then with guarantees, other districts are on caps. Do you fund it based on what the formula says you should be funded? And the guarantee is based on funding from, well, the fair funding formula is based on funding from 2021, but it goes back, way back on the guarantee amount.
Thank you.
So that's another potential risk as well. Expenditures, 84% of our expenditures are made up of personnel costs, salaries and benefits. Purchase services are about 9%, while other expenditures are about 7%. And then each year, as you see, each year expenses increase. Just on a high level. In 2023, the increase there was for the $25 million transfer. If you factor that out, from 22 to 23 was about a 6.7% increase, less the $25 million transfer. And then in 24, we were about a 5.7% increase. Going into this year, we're about 5.9% increase. And then in 2026, it shows about a 4.3% increase. And then the out years is about 2% increase, and that's due to our negotiated agreements expiring this year, and it doesn't have any, the forecast doesn't assume any additional increases in those years, so that's where the percentage differences are factored in. This next slide shows it by categories. Salary and benefits are our biggest costs, and as you see, those continue to increase. The bigger increase this year was due to the additional positions coming from the ESSER funds to the general fund. Salaries itself makes up 58.55%. The increases there are due to our negotiated agreements and also the additional personnel that's been coming onto the general fund over the last several years, and the increases in the out years are due to the negotiated agreements. Salary or benefits make up about 25%. Again, the increases there are a combination of the increase in personnel, increase in cost due to SCRS and SCRS, and then the out years factor in the percentage increases for healthcare costs. Purchase services make up about 9.9% of our total general fund spending. For this year, it's about $8.4 million, and the increases in the out years are due to projected increases in utilities and our liability insurance. Materials and supplies make up about 3.22% of our budget. The breakdown is in the chart below. Instructional supplies, office supplies, textbooks, which is the biggest chunk of about $700,000. Software, fuel, and building and cleaning supplies. So the decrease from last year to this year is due to the one-time expense for the highly qualified textbooks. And also to add from the previous years as well, in 22 and 23, we did not spend a portion of the textbook budget. The adoptions took place in 24. Capital outlay, see a little bit of a decrease from last year to this year, and then this year to next year. Those were due to one-time expenses from the last 2 years for our phone systems and infrastructure replacement and teacher desktop computers replacement that Mr. Binkley's department was doing those last couple of years. General fund debt, so decrease this year. We had a House Bill 264 debt paid off last fiscal year, so the remaining debt payment is for 2005 debt for facilities, and that was for the preschool acquisition and the building renovations at that time. Other objects, that's about 1.4% of our budget. About 1.2%, that is mainly made up of county auditor fees and liability risk insurance. Transfers and advances, those are done at the end of the year to transfer to funds with other funds from outside the general fund with negative funds, and then advances to the grant dollars or the federal funds until we receive those grant dollars reimbursed. In '23, we had that $25 million to the 070 fund. But overall, we're about $1 million to $900,000 each year. In the general fund summary, this graphic shows the blue, the total revenues and the total expenditures. So in 2024, last year, our revenues exceeded expenditures by $5.3 million. This year, they're projected at $4.2 million. If we continue to see some savings, it might be a little less. The same thing with the out years. Next year, we're projected about our expenses being 11.7 million greater than 13.8, and then 2028, 15.7 greater expenses greater than revenues, and then 2029, 17 million greater than revenues. This graphic was interesting. It was in the software that we use. It was a new graph, but just kind of wanted to highlight the average annual change of inflation, revenue, and expenses. So our historical annual change, inflation was 5.67, the historical average. Our revenue growth was 4.45%, while our expenses annual change was about 5.1%. And then the projected years, they're projecting inflation about 2.3%. Our revenue decline is 1.14% on an annual change, or average annual change over the 5 years. And then expenses about 3.8. And then the general fund summary, kind of putting it all together. For this year, total revenues are about 87 million, while expenditures are 91.2, which is expenditures over revenues of 4.2 million. So we're spending about, or we'll be spending about $4 million more than we're bringing in. So started the year with a $51 million cash balance, ending the year with a 45 million. And then each year, so the following year, revenues are about 83 million, which is about 4 million less due to the levy coming off. And then expenditures increasing, so we'll be deficit spending by 11 million. And then so on in the out years each year as expenditures increase and revenues stay about the same. In this graphic, I have to show the renewal levy coming off. So if you add it back on the bottom, I'll just go to the next chart where it includes it in the top. So you can see the expenditures over revenue. So 11 million, 13 million, 15 million, 17 million. We'd be in a cash deficit in 2029 if, as is, and if these expenditures play out. Each year there could be a give and take on things coming under budget, and each year has its own story on things that could happen as well.
George, just to clarify, this is if the renewal levy in 2026 passes?
Correct.
Thank you.
If it passes. If it does not pass, then we're at a deficit in 2028 and a $26 million deficit in 2029. Just kind of in summary, the November budget, or the November 5-year forecast, 87 million. The estimated expenditure is 91.2 million, which equates to revenues under estimated expenditures of 4.2 million. And then our cash balance policy, which we've talked in great length, is to have at least 90 days of operating cash in the 5-year to show 90 days of operating cash in the rolling 5-year forecast. So how does that look now? So 2024, last year we finished about 220 days. This year will be about 188 days. And then as the balance gets spent down, we'll be under the 90 days in 2027, 2028, 22 days, and then obviously with the deficit in 2029. And again, this assumes that the 2026 renewal is approved. This same graphic, but just shows more of the history. This slide I've had in the past, necessity of cash balances in Ohio. One for cash flow. We receive our property taxes 5 out of 12 months in the fiscal year. So we rely, that's our major revenue source, so we rely on that to pay our bills. So we do hit a low point in December, early January, and again in July and early August. Expenditure volatility, and then levy cycles as well, as see an increase when the levies are first passed and then a decrease as the levies run their cycle. and then also credit score and bond rating. A few years ago, we were able to upgrade our rating from a AA3 to a AA1, which we were able to refinance to save the taxpayers about $20 million saving, or $30 per $100,000 evaluation over the life of the debt. And then the last slide I have, the Ohio Department of Education, they send a reminder letters to file your forecast. They had this in their forecast, which I thought was a good talking point. As part of their email, they have what they do with it when the forecast is received, their examination. So I kind of took the wording from them and just put our charts. So the department examines all 5-year forecast submissions. If the department determines a district has the potential to incur a deficit during the first 3 years of the 5-year period, the district will be required to submit a written plan to eliminate the flagged deficits. In fiscal year 25 and 26, the department uses line 10.010 to identify any potential deficits. Districts projecting deficits in line 10.010 in fiscal year 25-26 may be placed into fiscal oversight. So where do we land? So fiscal year 25-26, we have a positive balance of $45 million and $33 million for those years. So we'll be off their radar. And then in fiscal year 27, the department uses line 12.010 to identify potential deficits, thereby assuming any projected renewal levies will pass. So the difference between the two lines, line 10 is your current balance, line 12 includes any renewal levies that you have out there, they'll assume they pass. So looking at that line, in line 27, we'll have a positive cash balance of $19 million. So this year will be off the radar, but if everything continues on trend, I would say, because expenditures and revenues can vary year to year, but if there's a deficit in that third year of the forecast, which is 2 years away, that we could potentially be on the radar. And that concludes the slides that I had.
Any questions, follow-up for George?
All right. So moving on, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the amended appropriations for fiscal year 25 be approved. The two changes that I have there are an increase in other grants and the adjustments for Fund 19 of $28,237 is due to the preschool SEF field trip of $1,500, and then also increasing the E-rate fund for $26,737 for E-rate funds that were received. And then also Title I funding reduced by $902 due to a reduction in carryover reallocation. The next item, G4, be resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the district participates in the Cuyahoga County Real Property Tax Advance Program. This includes requests for advances of all tax revenues collected in calendar year 2025. This is an annual resolution. What it means is their settlement dates are, well, let me back up. The county sends out the tax bills. They'll start receiving payments when they start sending them out. They can, if we don't pass this resolution, they can hold the revenue until the first half collection in March, and then the second half collection in August. They do begin to advance the dollars in January and February as they're being received. So if we approve this resolution, it allows us to be in their advancement program where we can receive a deposit in January and February, and again in July for the second half collection. It helps with cash flow, the purpose of it. And then the last item I have is a revision from the July 9th agenda. It is be resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the athletic event prices for 2024-2025 school year be approved as presented. This is an update to include the creation and implementation of promotional codes for 2024-2025 athletic live streaming event prices. Promotional codes will reduce the cost of $12.50 of a $12.50 ticket to $7.50 and an annual pass from $195 to $95 as presented in the exhibit. And the rationale there was, now that fall sports is done, the athletic department is looking to entice people to get the annual pass and offer it as a discount to try it out. And that concludes all my items, if there's any questions.
Any questions for George? Will the ticket price, when will the ticket pricing promos go into effect?
Is Dave there?
Approximately 24 hours after I submit the code request.
And when will that happen? Black Friday's coming up.
I can be ready for Monday.
Black Friday's coming up and holiday shopping, what wouldn't make a better gift? Thank you.
I have one more question for Dave. Would this be indefinite decrease or just something for right now?
The promo codes only last for as long as we make them. The request, this was just for this academic school year. So it'll be for the winter and potentially the spring.
Good question, thank you. Any other questions for George or Dave? Next on our agenda is superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Under my section, we are starting off with a continuation of our discussion last meeting about pathways forward with the recent levy defeat. So we talked about the board committed last meeting to giving George and I guidance as to next steps on December 12th. And so there's a handout that the board has in front of them. It's linked to the agenda for anybody watching that would like to see. But we've carved out a couple pathways to guide the discussion, with the first question being, how are we going to handle the budget? George just went through the 5-year forecast. How are we going to handle the budget starting next school year based on the roughly $10 million that will be reduced from our budget, 5 this year and the full 10 in the next year's school year's budget. We also need to take into consideration, as it was already mentioned, we have another renewal. One renewal that's remaining that will expire tax year 26, calendar year 27. We can go on the ballot for that the first time November of 26, but that generates about $8.5 million for the district. So something to keep into consideration. So as you can see on your handout, there's a couple pathways that we can consider as we take a look at how do we move forward with the reduction in revenue. And then the questions that are posed there are some when and what questions in terms of what we do about ballot issues moving forward. So, Mr. Micko, I'll turn it back over to you for start of the discussion.
Thank you, Cameron. Just to kind of set some expectations, we have some short-term decisions that we have to make. December 12th. Is our board meeting, and we do need to, as a board, give the administration consensus. We don't need to make those decisions today. We do need to be in a position that we've engaged in the dialogue, we've engaged in the questions, we've engaged in the give and take between the pathways so that we are prepared and ready to make those decisions at the December 12th meeting. The second portion of it is again, we're continuing the conversation from the last board meeting, but as a board and as a district, we have to decide what to do as far as levy, ballot, any of those kind of taxpayer initiatives. So to kind of help guide that, I think the first question that we should wrestle with is what to do about the budget beginning with the 2025-2026 school year. And it was timely. We've had quite a bit of feedback from the public, thanks to public comment, not only last time but today. But we also had George go through the 5-year forecast. And the one thing I would share for myself and for the audience is to some degree, we don't have the same tools that the federal government has or Ohio has. We are unable to have a negative balance on our 5-year forecast long term. And so that will guide our discussion. As George pointed out, it's not today, but it will be relatively soon, that to simply do nothing and not address it will necessitate the state to doing something. And, you know, not to over-dramatize it, but I would much rather have these decisions made in Strongsville than have these decisions made in Columbus. And so just kind of reading through the pathway one is, highlighted as the cash balance policy. And we discussed $3 million in reductions starting next school year, an additional approximately $3 million each year thereafter. The other pathway is to forego that, have no reductions. The benefit is it would spend down the cash balance. The negative is it, in my mind, it quickly gets out of control, makes it so that we can't make decisions effectively. I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to try a new pattern. If I can ask Michelle to start, I think we can just go through and, we'll just have open discussion about our concerns, any questions, how do we want to proceed from there.
I do have something to share about it. When I redid this, I was thinking a lot about what Brett shared earlier. And I just wanted to share this if you're following along at home, if you go under policies, bylaws, and then P0123, Code of Ethics, Code of Conduct, this speaks to our job as board members. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's very lengthy, but I'm going to highlight a couple things. You can read it all there. It says the Board of Education believes quality public education and good board service should be conducted in an ethical manner with traditional principles such as honesty, trust, fairness, and integrity. Each board member should conform his or her conduct to Ohio law, the Code of Ethics recommended by the Ohio School Boards Association, and the Code of Conduct set forth below as adopted from the National School Boards Association publication, Becoming a Better Board Member. So this is not unique to us. This is what's recommended by the National School Board Association. It says, while serving as a member of the Board of Education, each member is expected to agree to abide by the following Code of Ethics promulgated by the Ohio School Boards Association. A, remember that my first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of all students attending the public schools. Continues on. There are up to P number of points in this first section. But H I'll draw attention to as well. It says, render all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups. So the reason I bring this up is not to disagree with Brett, because I actually agree with him 100%. I shared it last board meeting. I am beholden to the taxpayer, but I am equally beholden to the students of this district. And I'm sharing this to share that there are two sides of the story. He's not wrong, but there are other things that we also have to abide by. And I wanted to make sure that the public also heard those things. So that's just kind of where my head is right now. How do I do both things? So my response to Brett, I guess, at this point is I'm going to offer a third option that's not here. I'm not sure it's going to be a popular option, but one thing that I think we need to consider is amending our cash balance policy. We did it with the intention of setting aside savings so that we saw the future, we saw a significant need in our buildings. We intended to plan for that. What we're hearing loud and clear from the community is that caused more confusion than it did benefit to the district. I think that $25 million made people nervous. Even though I think it is good and wise planning, I think it complicated matters for the community. So what I'm suggesting is the policy committee is meeting here, I don't know, a couple weeks, is to revise that policy. I'm not sure that continuing to keep that where it is doing anyone a benefit. And so should we do that,
pathway one disappears for the moment, because we're no longer holding to a cash balance for college that doesn't exist. And it opens up more options. Does it create more problems down the road? Yeah, it does. We still have buildings that need new roofs. Even if we don't spend the $25 million towards new buildings, we do improvements, as Bonnie suggested, to the current buildings, we still are going to need money. But putting it back to kind of ease that stress off the community, maybe that's what we need to do. We tried this way, it didn't work. Let's consider another way.
And kind of going off of what you said, the big concern doesn't seem to be that we're affording the kids too many things. It's that what are we spending the money on? What's used for it? So in spending the money is exactly what the taxpayers want to do and what they say we should do, which is what we plan to do. In my heart of hearts, I have a hard time cutting things that we think are important for them and having them suffer in that if we can afford at this moment not to.
So you're suggesting take the 25 million, put it back into general fund and do away with?
Yeah, because ultimately what it does, and I calculated this 18 months ago when we started the discussion, it buys us 1 year. So we're acting as if this kicks the can down the road tremendously. It doesn't. It buys us 1 year. But if that's what the community wants, we want 1 year in exchange for our $25 million, then that's what I think we need to consider that.
We've been kicking it down the road the last 3 levy cycles of trying to get this done anyways, so it's not really changing anything of what we have done. We've been saying, we're going to have this conversation, we're going to have this dreaded conversation. We've been talking about it now for months, a year.
She didn't talk. Go ahead. I'm thinking about what Michelle just said. I want to think about it for a second. So go ahead if you have something to say.
Well, the 25 million, putting it back then, I'm just worried about this, like, wasn't that going to be for, like, improvements of the schools? So, I mean, like, then we're kind of like, that's got to be done too if we don't pass a bond issue.
Correct.
Because we need new schools. So, I probably am not going to change my position. It was like this whenever we had our board meeting, and it's going to stay like this. I personally, unless something would change in my mind, do not want to cut anything for a year. I don't want to do that. I think all we'll do is hurt the kids, hurt the teachers. Already there's this sense of like doom and gloom in all the schools. I don't want to do that. I think if what they assumed is that we have too much money, us cutting things to keep the money, what are we doing? Then they're going to come back and say, you have this money, and now you're cutting things. Which, if I was a parent, I would be aggravated at that. I would be mad. I would say, well then, I'm not going to vote for it. So I think it's like that push and pull. I just don't think right now, I think we have a community that's kind of like divided and confused and and I don't think just rushing in and then cutting things is going to be the answer. I don't. So unless something changes with me, but I'm only one person, I do not want to cut anything. I want to give us at least a year, if we can,
So I think the difficulty is the transfer of the money solves the paycheck, what I call the paycheck issue. And the paycheck issue, what I mean by the paycheck issue is our operations, right? It then makes the capital problem exacerbated, right? Can you bring up the spreadsheet that shows the cuts and the effect? The one that shows the 3 million this year, and then the 3 million plus 3.5 in each year.
Yes.
That's the one. So that tab discusses what we discussed last year. And so if we choose to forego $3 million in cuts this year, we're then looking at the potential of trying to come up with $6.5 million cuts the year after. If we choose to forego that, we're looking at attempting to create close to $10 million in cuts at one time. And then ultimately, we're looking at trying to come up with $13 million in cuts, right? So, rough numbers to just normalize our budget, we are looking at a $50 million cut to our income that over 5 years. That's what the levy failure in round numbers represents. We're looking at approximately $30 million in cuts. So we're already taking a look at $20 million of our cash reserve to make up that difference. Because we're never in a position to budget income and expenses to match. We're always looking at how do we ride out, how do we save up in the early years, spend down in the later years, and eventually go to a position of saying we need new income, we need new revenue. So I am concerned that if we, Michelle, you're right, we could choose to forego the cash balance policy. We could choose to transfer that money, solve our paycheck issue, and we immediately take away whatever tools we have to start to solve our capital improvement problems. And they're not going away. We cannot solve that problem with trailers. Eventually we need to address it. But you're correct. The reason we're having this conversation is if we're talking about 1 year at a time, we're talking about $3 million. So I'm loath to just make the problem go away. I think we have to grapple with the pain. Now, I do think we might have a hybrid option to say, if we would choose to reduce that $3 million in year one, recognizing it makes year two more difficult, that might be a reasonable approach to balance. Nobody wants to do cuts that affect our students, and at the same time, we're charged with making sure our budget is sound and prudent. I cut you off. I apologize.
Well, I just was going to say, I agree with what you're saying, but we have a problem in that we have not found a way to communicate to the public how the long-term planning benefits the district, right? And I don't see that problem going away. So I'm looking for other options to at least simplify the problem so that it's easier to explain to the community. And I think that the cash balance policy is one way to do that. Not sure we'd have any more success. I feel like we're kind of grasping at straws here because there's a disconnect between what the community wants and what's best for our students. And I recognize that. And the challenge is, how do you reconcile the two? And I don't know that we can.
I have a question. So the last thing we talked about was the revision to the athletic ticket stuff and bringing that down. And I don't know how all the funds work with that and where that goes into. But if we're talking about cutting down by $3 million, does it make sense to be cutting down the price of tickets for the annual pass by $100 per person? Is that kind of counterproductive?
It doesn't, but people were upset about it and complaining, so we're responding to the people's needs.
Trying to pull more people
right,
and
but
get more people access. I mean, it's
right.
just, it's both. Like, we're trying to do what the people want and at the same time getting accused of not trying to do what the people want.
Right.
And so we can't, we're in a spot where we can't win.
It just
and
seems
that's what's so
counterproductive to have those
frustrating.
two conversations right after each other.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and I thought of that when we were, and I'm like.
Like, why are we
thank
even
you
having
for
this
pointing it
conversation then
out.
if we're?
Yeah.
Does that come out of the athletic budget or the general fund?
It goes into the athletic budget. A portion goes in the athletic budget, and I think a third goes into Dave.
No, it's split between the athletic department and the athletic district.
And I
And by
think people-
cutting it, it could actually increase their revenue. More people will, hopefully.
When I think all the different funds become confusing for people too, because I know it becomes confusing for me. I know that we'll ask questions all the time about like, could we, from this fund, that fund? I think that's the other big part of it too, of what funds can be used for and where they are allocated. That might be a more important way to break things down for people to see for future planning of, these funds are here, but these can only be used towards this. These funds are here, these expire at this point, breaking it down that way. Because our personal bank accounts aren't broken down that way of where they can go. So you see a certain lump sum of money, you think, well, you can use that for anything. Use that to build the new buildings. Use that to.
Michelle's idea has merit. It makes it black and white. It simplifies.
Okay.
I feel like
No,
it.
we can think about it.
Yeah.
What I want to do is just to go through the two pathways. The benefit of pathway one is it aligns to our cash balance policy, which Michelle has brought an option to deviate from that cash balance policy. With that said, I think it's important to note that the spirit of the cash balance policy, I think, is sound, and I think it's prudent. It does keep us, the reductions keeps us financially stable for the next 5 years. Some of the concerns, and I think this is what Michelle, I think we're all grappling with it, but Michelle enunciated it. While it keeps our cash balance at a sustainable level in the early years, it ignores prudent funding levels. And that's what I think you described well with the board's dual responsibility to the taxpayer along with the students. It does not address the funding risk of levy failure if the November 2026 issue is not renewed. And that is it is a large concern of mine. I am loath to assume much of anything, and I don't think it's reasonable to just assume that the 2026 renewal will pass. And this is the one of the concerns I have, is it accelerates an unsustainable growth rate of deficit spending. And George's 5-year forecast highlights that. However you look at it, we do have a healthy, some think a too rich cash balance. But what that cash balance means is that we can manage that deficit spending gap. And we could manage that for a while. The difficulty is when you keep on doing that, as that gap continues to increase, it becomes more and more difficult to close that gap with a future levy. And so if you imagine in your home, if you continue to go to your savings account to make the budget work, and your income continues to stay the same, but your expenses continue to go higher and higher, the first year you only need to make up a smaller shortfall, but your expenses continue to rise, and all of a sudden you're in a position where you just can't make it work. And when that happens with businesses, they go bankrupt. When that happens with homes, you file for bankruptcy. When that happens to school districts, the state comes in and makes the decisions for you. And I know we all know that, but I wanted to say it out loud.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, like, you're right. I agree with you. And we've said that over and over and over and over to the community, and it's not resonating. And I'm not sure that continuing to say it is going to change anything. We have to send the message to the community that we are attempting to hear you while balancing our duties. And I don't think that, and I might agree with Sharon here, I'm not sure cuts is going to send that message. It may send the wrong one. I mean, notoriously, cuts get levies passed, right? We know that. That's nothing, that's no secret. But I'm not sure that that's what this community, I'm just not sure that's the message they're going to respond to.
Looking at the pathway 2, which is similar to what you're suggesting, right? The benefit is it does maintain that commitment to our student education, right? And that student experience. It supports students with what we believe they need. It does reduce the current cash balance. The risk is future levies would just be addressing a deficit spend. It deviates from our cash balance policy, or perhaps removes the cash balance policy. Some of the things that are future thinking is it does put us at risk for a potential downgrade, which then makes it that more difficult to deal with the capital project. We already highlighted the Auditor of State's eventual involvement. We do have a concern to certify our 412 certificates, and George is charged with being able to certify those 412 certificates, which is just, I don't want to go into the voodoo of what a 412 certificate is, et cetera, but it is something that George has to do, and I'll give you a chance to comment, that says the financial decisions we're making today, George, with his treasurer acumen, can say we have the money in the bank to make them. Did you want to highlight that anymore?
Yeah, and it's just not the treasurer, it's also the board president and the superintendent also signed the 412. And what it is certifying that we enter multi-year contracts, that we have the funds available to enter those contracts, and specifically also, yes, the purchase service agreements, but it also the labor agreements as well. So if you're looking to negotiate with the labor unions, you might be restricted on how many years that you'd be able to approve a labor agreement based on the funds that are available. So currently by law is 3 years. If you're showing a deficit in the third year out, then you're not able to certify for that third year. So so those are the different factors that go into certifying the certificates. Is if you're showing wherever you're showing that deficit is as far out, you can go to certify a potential service contract or labor agreement.
And another way, because I have had to sign those, another way to describe it is it means that we can't just operate on a whim and a wish. We can't just assume that levies are going to be passed. We can't just assume that renewals are going to be passed. We actually have to be able to say, hey, for the life of whatever this is that we're signing, there is an assumption. It is not an assumption, well, everything will work out in the end. The assumption is we have the money, and we will have the money. I think I'm going to, are any other comments or questions?
The only other concern that I have with Pathway 2 is if we don't do any cuts, is that in 18 months, we could potentially be doing $6 million in cuts. And I just, well, that would be what, approximately 5% of our budget, about? That would be a big undertaking, but if nothing changes in the next year and a half.
So in the comment
6-7%.
I'd like to share that, again, is a different way to approach what Michelle's talking about. There is the intention of the district that we want to continue to grow versus the pathway that if we just if we choose not to make difficult decisions, and every decision is difficult, but what I'm afraid of is we quickly get into a position where we're just going to try to do a renewal for whatever small amount that we think will address the taxpayers' needs. And suddenly, we're in a mode of every 2 to 3 years, there's an increase. Every 2 to 3 years, we're looking at how do we balance the budget? Is it cuts? Is it this? Is it that? Versus the work that I think has been done in the last 5 years to make this, and I don't want to, I do believe we're a premier district right now. I believe we're one of the leading districts. And so for me, some of the decision process is saying, how do we understand the decisions we're making today and the consequences they're going to have tomorrow? And avoiding tough decisions now, I'm afraid, will, again, I need to think it through, Michelle. It makes sense in the sense that it plugs holes. But I'm afraid that if we plug those holes and kick the can down the road, we won't be able to change course. Are there any other comments? I mean, that's getting really lofty.
Yeah, I just want to add to that is it doesn't have to be like either or. Like we can amend the cash balance policy and still approve cuts. Like those are not distinct. We can still say this didn't work for our community. They want to see the money lumped together, and here's still our concern. Like we can do both. It maybe looks a little trickier, but I don't think it's out of the question.
Okay. And I will just, we still have another question to consider.
I think it is more so just spending the money that's down, even looking at this document that we got today and what's being assumed with, we've got this money here and here's people commenting on it and what their house is worth and what their taxes are. Comparing that in terms of not the betterment of the students, but what somebody's house is worth. So kind of looking at this, like, it's kind of irrelevant to the whole thing to me. Like, doesn't really matter. And for that reason there's no separation between the monetary amount and what is in the best interest of the students is what I'm seeing. And so I think kind of like what Michelle's saying, for what the taxpayers or for what the people are seeing, they're not differentiating that. So we need to spend that money down because as long as that money is there, there's going to be that notion that we don't need more money, no matter where that money can go or how it can go. And I think we have kicked this can down the road multiple times. Last meeting, it was stated, this wasn't going to pass. We knew it wasn't going to pass. I thought it was going to pass. I really did. If not, I wouldn't have spent the time that I did, at schools or talking about it or engaging in how many conversations we had here about it, how many wasted hours, I guess you would say, for no reason. I think we have to spend the money because that's what people want to see happen. And there's nothing that we feel like, oh man, we could just cut this here or cut that there. That I stick with Sharon in my thought of, I think we agree from hearing what you said, of not making the kids suffer.
Well, that's not like forever. I mean, it eventually,
but
they'll have to be, but I just think that's just like a knee-jerk reaction, and then what? And then what? I was at the polls all day. I heard what people said, yelling, spend your money, so I mean, I think it was pretty clear. I mean, I don't think, they, that's the feeling, so.
I think your then what leads us into our second conversation. And I'm going to move into that because it's all tied together, right? And so the second conversation is what to do about the ballot. And so just as far as our ground rules are concerned, the first question we need to think about, not necessarily answer today, but think about is when. And our two options in 2025 is the May 6th primary election and or the November 4th general election. And so the comments, the bullet points are 3 failures in a row. Does the voter need a pause? is more time needed to engage and communicate with voters? On the one hand, will goodwill be lost from supporters by not going on the May ballot? On the other hand, is the revenue shortfall critical and time is of the essence? And for me, the question is what is the predictor for success?
I think when there were opponents of the levy that did come forward with an idea of having a smaller amount or a smaller millage with it and giving their thought of what would have passed in their mind of speaking for people, I think we have, I know hindsight's always 20/20, but I feel like looking forward, we do have a prospect of a levy passing under the correct amount of what it is. It wasn't people saying no money, no way, no nothing. It was, we're not comfortable with this, but we would be comfortable with this. So it's not, and from what I've seen from the general public of people speaking on that and agreeance with that, or emails that we've received or comments that we've received from people, it's not no levy, no how, no way. It sounds like there is potential or hope that a levy is going to pass or will pass, given that its necessity is the amount that is warranted or seen as, I don't know the word I'm looking for, appropriate for what we're doing.
I can answer one of the questions, I think. What will be lost from supporters? I don't think so.
Okay.
The people that are going to support the levy through all of this are going to continue to support the levy. Those are the people who are in the die-hard, it doesn't matter the dollar amount, we vote yes on levies. And I don't think we're going to lose those. What we need to gain is the in-between voters, because you have the group of their always knows, too. And then I want to amend one of the other questions for consideration. I don't think it's just does the voter need a pause. I think it's do we need a pause? Does the school district need a pause? Do our teachers need a pause? Do our students need a pause? And that answer, I think, is yes.
So the thing I continue to grapple with is if we simply say, hey, what number do we think will pass? We have a responsibility to determine the number required for our district's education. The conversation has never been, are we wasting money in general? I'm sure there's always someone. Are we wasting money? Are we growing our, spending our money too fast or whatever? We've done a lot of good work to make sure that we are spending money wisely, spending money appropriately, spending money in a prudent fashion. But I continue to go back to what George highlighted is that gap of revenue versus expenses, and that gap is mitigated with a smaller levy, but then again, the consequence of a smaller levy is we're back sooner. And so it's the blindfolded lady and the balance. On the one hand, hey, we address the revenue. On the other hand, we're coming back in 2 to 3 years. Well, we've already heard time and time again from the community, and I don't know if I've used the word pachinko before, but I don't think anybody knows what pachinko is, or not enough people know what pachinko is. But you quickly become like you're in a tennis match, and what's the new one?
Pickleball.
I quickly feel like I'm the pickle ball, and you just keep going back and forth. So that would be the only thing that gives me pause about just knee-jerking on an amount. But we do need to consider it and go from there. I do think there's consensus that May 4th is not reasonable for a number of reasons. So I think we can start thinking about November 4th, in which case question 2 is what? And I'm going to just go through the options, and then we can all start to think about that for future meetings. An operating levy addresses paycheck issues. A capital bond addresses our buildings. We have had a elementary school and other stuff plan for over a year. We've had a lot of community engagement. I think strategically or realistically, we paused that. We are now at a point where we can no longer pause it much reasonably anymore. So I do think we need to consider the primacy of that along with the paycheck issue. Critical needs can no longer be ignored. I will have more to say on that during the Facilities Development Committee report, but that's all part of the conversation. A combined issue would target all the district's needs with one vote, simplifying the voter decision. One perceived benefit would be that it eliminates the need to return to the voter multiple times. And as an example, the city of Cleveland in the November election had a combined capital improvement bond along with an operating levy to address both the paycheck issues or the general fund issues and the building issues.
When did that pass?
It did pass.
Yeah, it did.
That was a softball question. Thanks, Michelle.
Well, we can go one step further. Columbia Station put them up separately, and only one of them.
So,
So there's great data on that regard.
correct. Any other comments, questions, or what have you? So as a board, we'll need to consider bringing direction to George and Cameron at our December 12th meeting. Seriously consider Michelle's option and seriously consider the two pathways, and we will come to a decision and a vote at our December meeting. Cameron, did you have any closing comments?
No. No, what I always think about when I have decisions like this to make is to reflect on the discussion was had, come to the next experience with what I think the right decision is, with all the information that I have, and share that. And that way, we can move forward with everybody being prepared with a concise focus on what do we want to do, what do I think is best with the cash balance policy, what do I think is best with the reductions, whether it's the 3 million, the none, or somewhere in between. And that way, when I have time to reflect, to think through it, I can come and be ready to share my decision and have a healthy discussion. So I appreciate the discussion everybody had here. All George and I need is the direction to move forward, and we'll take the direction of the board and go from there. Moving on, we have nothing under business services. We do have a couple items under curriculum, so Nicole's going to come up and do the report for this month.
Good evening. Tonight for your consideration, we have two issues. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the field placement affiliation agreement between the Ohio University College of Health Sciences and Professions and the Strongsville City School District be approved as presented in the exhibit. Our second item, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that permission be granted to Strongsville High School German teacher Patrick Allen to travel with German students to Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. The trip will take place June 14th through 23rd of 2026. Expenses associated with the trip will be paid by participating students. If necessary, the trip will be postponed or destination changed depending on world events at the time. And that's all I have for you.
Does anyone have any questions for Nicole? Why are they going to Italy and Switzerland if they're only German students?
You know, I went on the same trip 2 years ago with the students. It is well worth it to go many places while you're there.
Thank you.
They will enjoy it.
Next, Andy will come up with the student service report.
Good evening, members of the board. I have one item for you this evening.
Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with Insight Behavioral Consulting, operating an educational institution known as Insight Academy, for placement of a student who requires special education and related services for the 2024-25 school year. Tuition in the amount of $74,984 will be charged on a prorated basis and an additional $5,000 if the student attends extended school year.
Questions for Andy? Thank you. Next, we'll have Ryan up for the Human Resource Report for the month.
Thank you and good evening. I have the following items in human resources for your consideration. Item 1, resignation, certificated. Item 2, retirement, certificated. Item 3, appointments, non-certificated. Item 4, appointments, certificated substitutes. Item 5, appointments, non-certificated substitutes. Item 6, appointments, certificated district substitutes. Item 7, appointments, after-school ELL tutors. Item 8, appointments, non-certificated athletic supplemental contracts. Item 9, changes in hours, non-certificated. Item 10, changes in status, non-certificated. Item 11, contract recommendations, non-certificated. Item 12, educational and experience upgrades. Item 13, stipends, drug testing coordinators. Item 14, volunteers, chaperones. Item 15, leaves of absence, certificated. Item 16, leaves of absence, non-certificated. Item 17, unpaid leaves, non-certificated. Item 18, revision. Item 19, revision. And item 20, termination, non-certificated. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent to terminate any and all employment contracts of John Promozic effective immediately pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3319.081, and this requires a vote.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? We have all read the document, the termination resolution. We are all aware of the situation. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. We have no technology report tonight, so that ends my report.
Thank you, Cameron. Next is report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell.
I'm going to do it today.
Nice.
Polaris has been busy this past week, hosting several 10th grade students to come in and see what all the programs are about. And registration is now open for our high school students for next school year. You can visit the website for more information. As of 5 days ago, there were still spots available for the after-school program Explorer Club for grades 4, 5, and 6. There are several programs that you can register your student for. More information can also be found online. Hurry, because spots are going fast. These programs take place December 3rd and 4th and 10th and 11th. And finally, we have our one more meeting this year, December 10th, preceding a dinner where we will honor our retiring superintendent, Bob Timmons. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Report on legislation. I will share with the community. We are currently in the lame duck session. More than a dozen bills are pending in the Ohio legislature right now. Lawmakers have said that property tax relief is one of the issues their constituencies are concerned about, as we well know, thanks to some of our public comment. And quite honestly, we all know it is a concern. At the General Assembly closes at the end of the month. Any existing bills that are not passed will have to start the process all over again next election year. House Speaker Jason Stevens said he doesn't think any major property tax reform will happen before the end of the year. Any more sweeping property tax legislation is going to take a lot of conversations, Stevens said. and I'm reading from the article. While speaking to reporters Tuesday, Stevens, a former county auditor, explained the issue is complicated, and he said lawmakers are serious about wanting to pass some relief. He's quoted as saying, "The Property Tax Commission is working very hard to get a consensus as to what is a doable solution for property taxes by either making it more simple or maybe have another set of hearings or making a little more thorough process to put a levy on the ballot," which I think is a nice way of saying that Columbus is grappling with many of the same issues that we as a school board are grappling with regarding levies, regarding revenue, regarding all of those issues. Some elements of tax reform plans have been incorporated into budgets, and the Ohio legislature has passed a couple of bills to provide limited property tax relief to some people. SB 43 is now allowing surviving spouses of disabled veterans to take advantage of the homestead exemption. And House Bill 57 has provided property tax assistance for some low-income and disabled senior citizens. But the bills that would provide more comprehensive fixes, like the one that would cap the amount of property tax a resident would have to pay, have been stymied. And then in a similar fashion, or at least I thought it was related, there's a proposal to increase local government's contribution to Ohio police officers' pensions from 19.5% to 24% by 2027, bringing it even with the state firefighters. And if you've watched the news, there's been a lot of conversation on that. And the dialogue reminds me of what we're doing as a school district. On the one hand, pensions in Ohio are insolvent, and the problem isn't today, but they can see the cliff and running out of money tomorrow. On the other hand, the fix is to get more revenue in. And so in Columbus, they'll say, we'll have the cities take care of it. And now the cities are saying, wait a minute, where are we going to come up with the money? And that dialogue or that pattern is very familiar, at least to me, and I do believe we're going to be having these kinds of conversations for the next foreseeable future, for next year and probably a few years beyond. And then the only other one I wanted to share with the community is that there is a bill in the House that is being considered during the lame duck session. It would provide money to update school buses and increase penalties for illegally passing a school bus. And the bill is backed by State Rep Bernie Willis from Springfield after an 11-year-old Clark County boy was killed in a school bus crash on the first day of school. So that concludes that report. We do have our liaison reports. City Council met this Monday. The two announcements I will share with the public is there was consideration for modifying some zoning regulations, laws concerning tattoo parlors. There were two people who spoke rather well, and I didn't know about it, but if you think about tattoos as things that should only be considered by sailors, that world is a little different now, and the zoning will address the discrepancy in the law for permanent makeup, for different kind of cosmetic procedures that are all considered one form or another of tattooing. But there was one woman who does this as a business in Strongsville, and she spoke very eloquently about the work she does, whether it be permanent makeup or, addressing cancer patient needs and things like that. I'm not looking at George, but there's also things for addressing balding. So that was one announcement, and then the other announcement is very important. On Sunday, there is the holiday lighting ceremony at the square. The ceremony starts at 5 p.m. I've been assured that Santa Claus will make a visit. I've been assured that there will be hot cocoa and fireworks. So it's a great way to start the holiday season, and that's this Sunday. No, not this Sunday.
Is this Sunday?
It is this Sunday. Oh, that's right, they moved it before Thanksgiving. So that's this Sunday at the Square. It is a wonderful event. The mayor takes a lot of joy and pride in it, and if you have nothing to do on Sunday, it's a great way to spend with the community and your families. That concludes City Council. Do we have a Strongsville Education Foundation update?
That would be me. The only thing that they've been working on diligently is Casino Night, which is this Saturday at the Rec Center at 7 o'clock. I think as of the last time I got an email, they have 250 people coming, which is a great way to, these people put a lot of their heart and soul into like helping our kids, and they don't get paid for it. They're all volunteers. So, you know, check them out, check their website. I think all the tickets are gone, but, you know, you can always donate to them because they do a lot of good for our kids, field trips and grants for different things in classrooms. So I really appreciate what they do.
And senior scholarships, which is a big part of what they do, and it's
They're
wonderful.
working on that now. I think they work on it, yeah.
Strongsville PTA Council, do we have an update?
That's me. Oh, wait. I'm wrong. At the PTA meeting on November 7th, Dr. Ryba talked about the levy, and Emily Young, the new principal at Sarar, came in, and I think everybody really enjoyed her. She was telling us about all these different things she does with kids, which I never even thought about it, but to like include them or to get them to have empathy, like they all build like a tower, but some of the kids are blindfolded, which I really thought was like, wow, I would never have thought of that. But then the other kids had to help the ones that were blindfolded. So she just really impressed me. She just seems like she's going to be really good there and good for our district. So I enjoyed listening to her. And then December 5th is the luncheon at Waterford Clubhouse. The meeting starts at 10 and lunch is at 11. They have $9,000 in grant money, and that's already passed. They said you needed to get in your request by last Friday, November 15th. So, but we didn't have a meeting, so I couldn't say that. And they also passed this out, which a lot of people might be interested in. It's IEP by the numbers, and it's Thursday, December 12th from 6:30 to 8 at the administrative offices. So it's here, the IEP thing? Okay. You have to RSVP by Monday, December 9th. And it says bring your child's IEP and follow along with us. So I think it's just to help people understand all the different nuances in the IEP field. So you're all welcome to come. Just respond. And I think, let me see, December 19th from 6 to 8 is NEO Extreme in Brunswick. Info should be out week before Thanksgiving, so look that up on your in newsletter. It should be I think it should be under the PTA thing. And Reflections, which is the art project that Katie Drake always does, is having an art show December 14th from 10 to 2 at the library. And the theme of this year is accepting imperfections. And so I've gone to those, and these kids are really talented. So if you're out and about and you want to stop by the library, she works really hard with them. She'll be showing all their stuff. So I think that's it. Oh, DARE, November 26th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're having a skating party, and you can get the tickets online. And I think that's it. That concludes it.
Thank you, Sharon. Next is Finance Committee report.
There has been no meeting and the next meeting's to be announced. And policy, our next meeting is December 18th at 1:30 p.m. here in the admin building if you'd like to hear us discuss policy.
You know we all do. Facilities Committee, the committee did have a meeting on Tuesday here in this building. Mr. Breckner went through our priority list reviewed some of the construction that has occurred this year and has teed up the projects that he wants the Facilities Committee to consider and recommend to the board. I will share that it was a timely conversation because the state of our buildings, the state of our critical infrastructure was discussed. Mr. Breckner will be, and the Facilities Committee will be bringing some recommendations for some immediate HVAC needs at Kinsner and Sarrar. And this directly affects our conversation, or flavors our conversation about the 070 fund, because the money has to come from somewhere. But those HVAC projects are immediate concerns. They're not going anywhere, and inflation is what it is. And so I anticipate and look forward to their recommendation. Steve also did a very nice job of reviewing our roofs. And this, again, is that you end up feeling like the pickleball. On the one hand, we need to address the roofs. On the other hand, if we choose to go for new buildings, are you going to put a 20-year roof on a building that you don't expect to keep for more than 5 years? And so all the members of the Facilities Committee can bounce back and forth with arguments the same way we all can, but those are the decisions we have that we'll be facing in the short and the long term.
Can I just make a request that we get those numbers with the critical repairs as soon as possible?
I know Steve is working on them feverishly. So, and we do have, our next meeting, Steve, help me, is February 11th in this building will be the next Facilities Committee meeting. And I do want to thank them. Like all of our committees, they're all volunteers. They do it because they're interested and focused on helping the district improve. Business Advisory Council?
We had a meeting on November 8th. We talked about expanding the focus to all kids and creating a workforce summit and planning for that. It would take place mid-February in the Media Center. It would be second semester speech and communication students, which is approximately 120 to 150 kids. There would be different workstations, including mock interviews and casual talk. We went over a bunch of questions and decided in groups which ones we think would be beneficial to ask the kids in the mock interviews. They would have one planned question where they would know what it was going to be. They'd have one on-the-spot question and one question from the student for the adult. We thought it was interesting that they wanted to have it be 15 minutes with that mock interview. That's a lot for somebody that's a teenager to talk to an adult that they don't know and do a mock interview. Kind of nerve-wracking to do that, but a great experience. The students would have to research the people they are conducting the interviews and be ready for whomever they get to be able to ask questions that are pertinent to who they have. And they would also get instant feedback. So instead of going back to the classroom days later and finding out feedback, they'd get feedback on the spot about their communication style, nonverbal communication, their greetings, things like that. And they would also have a casual talk session where they might be talking about resume feedback, short article discussion stations, community service opportunities, summer work opportunities, senior project connections, and all of this is to use their professional nonverbal communication, which shows interest and enthusiasm, the art of small talk, asking a question, and listening to an answer. And yeah, great time was had by all. That concludes my report. Except for Sharon, because she wasn't there.
Thank you, Haley.
You always throw me under the bus.
Next is adoption of the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items appearing in the agenda denoted as type action consent are adopted by one single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
The motion carries. Next on our agenda is superintendent's timely information.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. George will put up the slides. I'm able to get out into the buildings a couple times a week usually and see the great work that's going on. But Dan puts these slides together for me, and it's just an awesome opportunity to celebrate the work that's going on in the district. And it's also great for me to see some of the things I don't get to see when I'm out in the building. So we're going to start at Kinsner in 5th grade with Mrs. Miles' science class. And so as you can see through some of the pictures, you could study in a book what decomposition means, but what they did is they took some of the mini pumpkins left over from the holidays, they put them in terrariums, they put worms and other organisms in there, made their hypotheses and their predictions as to what would happen to that, charted it out, took data, and what a great experiment for them to see what happened. So as Ms. Miles shared, it's been a rewarding project because the kids got to really apply what they learned in the real-world context. Plus, they get super excited to take turns documenting the data and being true scientists. So a great way to bring a scientific concept to life. Moving on up to the middle school, we're going to go to 7th grade ELA classes in the Pioneers team for Mrs. Randall and Mrs. Hartso. You know, one of those typical things for school is you have a unit test. You have to prepare for that unit test. And what a creative way they've put into place. They got kids into groups. They selected an area of study of the current unit that they wanted to focus on. That group had to look at what they learned, put it together in a poster, and not only learn it at a deeper level for themselves, but then to be the teacher for other students to share what are character traits, what are author's purpose. Again, they took the role as being the distributor of knowledge and the learning on the agency and their learning versus just having to take rote memorization. So great idea from those two teachers to take an aspect of student life that you have to do and make it engaging and interactive with the kids. And finally, at the high school, we're going to go to Mr. Collins' AP Human Geography class. And so this is a class we've had for a handful of years. If memory serves, they bumped it to freshmen can take it now, right? So we've tried to look at building AP courses through the continuum of the high school. And so recently, they took a look at how language can be a major component of both conflict and attempts at unity between social and political groups. So they've been working in groups, developing presentations on the impact of language, and the differences and the difficulties that it may cause or may help to bring people together. And there's a variety of questions that they've been answering that I think are just intriguing for this class to dig into and to look at the impact of language as it has on the world. So we appreciate those educators in their work to bring engaging lessons to life. And finally, we know that it's a short week next week for Thanksgiving. And we are moving into the December holiday season. So there's a variety of concerts at all levels that are there starting December 3rd all the way through December 18th. And you can either see those in person or you can live stream them and see them on demand on SCS TV. And Scott will be a busy guy coming up. And what did you tell me, Scott? You've figured out how to live stream, what, 4 locations at the same time. So his skills know no boundary. So we appreciate you, Scott. So with that ends the timely information update.
Next is Board of Education. Other? Do we have any others?
I have one. We should be congratulating Becca Bova's 2nd grade class at Whitney Elementary, because they proved that just one vote can make a difference in the world. So just your one vote for anything is, because they adopted a calf through Discovery Dairy adopts a cow, and she was born last month at 100 pounds and 32 inches, and she, per Becca, was utterly the cutest calf. The kids named the calf, one of my least favorite words to try to say on the spot, peony. Rendezvous, peony.
Yeah,
peony.
I read that, yeah.
There were over 152,000 votes submitted, and America's favorite calf happened to be Peony. We have another local celebrity here in Strongsville. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any other reports or any others?
I went to the fall play, and it was really good. I'm just saying that. My grandson was in it. I was very proud, but they always do. They really do like such a great job with those kids, and the place was packed, and they got a standing ovation. So it was fun. It was a fun night. They're having a musical in the spring. Can't wait to see that one.
We're all looking forward to it.
Laura? Just, the Chamber of Commerce has their holiday scholarship dance Friday, December 6th from 7 to 11 p.m. It came back to Strongsville. It's at the Encore Event Center, formerly Mashad's. If you have a chance to attend that, that would be great. They give back $22,000 in scholarships to Strongsville seniors. So I just happen to have tickets if anybody needs any, so let me know.
Thank you, Laura. Any others? No, I did want to take a moment to just, our Strongsville school community experienced a tragedy earlier this week. As many of you know, one of our senior students, Dominic Galarzo, was killed in a traffic accident early in the morning. I just want to share what was quoted in the article. Our Dominic was the most kind, sweet soul, dedicated son, loving brother to Isaiah, and friend to many. He loved dogs, watching UFC, dancing to Spanish music, and tinkering on his car. He was deep and intellectual, an avid learner that had aspirations of becoming a therapist to help others. His smile would light up the room, and he gave the best hugs. He will be so missed, but his beautiful life will live forever in us. He is a model Mustang. He will be a Mustang forever. It gives me pause. Thanksgiving's approaching. Make sure to prioritize the things that are important and not worry about the things that aren't. I will pray for him, and I will pray for him, his family, and I suggest you do the same also. Thank you. Meeting notification. We have a regular Board of Education meeting Thursday, December 12th, 7 p.m. in this room. And we do have reason for executive session on the topics of
To prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, to consider the employment of a public employee, and to consider the discipline of a public employee.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stopchek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Ms. Stachek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
The motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 9:40. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you for your attention, and have a happy Thanksgiving.